You know the scene. Every March 17th, the world goes green. We celebrate this legendary hero, a man who supposedly converted an entire nation, worked all sorts of miracles, and of course drove every last snake out of Ireland. We all think we know the story of St. Patrick.
But what if I told you that the St. Patrick of the parades, the guy in the green robes holding a shamrock, what if I told you he never existed? That he was, for the most part, a carefully crafted invention?
So, let's do this. Let's peel back all those layers of myth that have been building up for centuries. Because what we find underneath is a story that's way more human and honestly, way more incredible than the fiction. So who was the real man behind it all?
Okay, to find him, first we have to clear away all the legends and folklore. The popular image of Patrick we have today is really just a collage of myths, and they were all created about 200 years after he died for some very, very specific political reasons.
And pretty much everything you see here, it's fiction. Driving out the snakes? That's a powerful symbol for sure, but not something he literally did. And the Shamrock story? That doesn't even show up in writing for another 1,000 years. The big showdown at Tara, the bishop's hat, the idea that he was sent by the Pope, all of it, later inventions. You won't find any of it in his own accounts of his life.
So, if we strip away all the legends, what are we left with? Well, lucky for us, we have two documents that historians are pretty confident are the real deal. Two letters written by the man himself, his confessio, or confession, and his letter to Patricius. Seriously, these are the only truly reliable sources we've got.
And you know, in these texts, we don't meet some kind of superhero. We meet a man named Patricius. His confessio isn't some big, boastful memoir. It's this passionate, sometimes pretty defensive explanation of his life's mission, written right at the end of his life in what he himself calls uneducated, rustic Latin.
This one quote, it tells you everything you need to know about the real man. This is the very first sentence of his story. It's not a boast, it's a confession. He calls himself a sinner, uneducated, and says a lot of people look down on him. That is a world away from the confident, miracle-working legend, isn't it?
His real life was filled with trauma and this incredible personal drive. He was born a Roman citizen over in Britain, but then at just 16, he was kidnapped by Irish raiders and forced into slavery for 6 years as a shepherd. He eventually made this daring escape and got back home, but then, years later, driven by these powerful visions, he chose to go back to the very land where he'd been a slave. And get this, his mission wasn't official. It was deeply personal, completely unsanctioned, and he did it against the wishes of his family and his church.
But here's where the story gets even crazier. Patrick wasn't just on some rogue mission. He might not have even been the first Christian bishop to set foot in Ireland. Yeah, there's a whole other story here, one that was deliberately buried.
The key that unlocks this whole hidden history is one single date, the year 431. According to the chronicles of the time, this is the first totally solid, reliable date in early Irish history. And the man it mentions, it's not Patrick.
No, it's about this guy, Patricius. A chronicler from that time, a man named Prosper of Aquitaine, wrote it down plain as day. In 431, Pope Celestine ordained and sent Patricius as the first bishop to the Irish believing in Christ. Think about what that means. It means there were already Christians in Ireland, and the first official Pope-approved mission wasn't led by Patrick at all, but by this other guy.
Okay, so if Patricius was the official first bishop, why is Patrick the one we all know and celebrate? Why isn't there a St. Patricius Day? Well, the answer isn't about miracles, it's about marketing. A brilliant PR campaign launched in the 7th century.
Fast forward a couple hundred years after Patrick's death. The Church of Armagh is in the middle of a major power struggle. They wanted to be the top church in all of Ireland, and to do that, they needed a legendary founder, a national apostle. They basically needed a superhero origin story to back up their claims.
So, the writers at Armagh got to work. Step 1, pick a candidate. They chose the historical missionary Patricius. Step 2, write flashy new biographies filled with incredible miracles modeled on the lives of the original apostles. Step 3, systematically erase the competition. They painted Patricius' official mission as a total failure and basically wrote him out of the history books. They literally manufactured a super saint.
So the result is you have two completely different figures, the real man and the myth they created. Let's just put them side by side, because when you see it like this, the difference is absolutely staggering. Okay, so the real Patricius, he talks about a personal, unsanctioned mission. The myth, he's got the backing of popes and angels. The man was humble, defensive, even insecure.
The myth has him boldly staring down kings. The real Patrick talks about being afraid of local rulers and having to pay them for protection. The myth has him working huge dramatic miracles. And in his own words, not a single mention of snakes or shamrocks. In the myth, that's like his whole brand. The writers at Armagh basically took reality and just flipped it completely upside down.
This is the man we should probably remember. A lonely, really determined figure. A former slave who went back to what he considered the edge of the known world. He wasn't some powerful figure at the center of everything. He was on the fringes, and was even distrusted by his own Christian colleagues back in Britain. You know, his real story of perseverance is so much more powerful than any legend they could have made up.
And all of this leaves us with one last, pretty provocative thought. Patrick's story shows us that so often history is written by the people who need a hero. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other historical figures that we celebrate were sculpted, polished, and perfected by a really effective PR machine long after they were gone?